Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Of course, as always, I am your host here with you, Charles Hamaker, here at the Black Media Matter Studios. It is the end of the month of July, and I say it throughout the spring and throughout the summer. Things continue to roll, especially now with the fact that Seahawks training camp is currently underway, bringing good news and not so good news. So, getting into all of that, we'll get straight into our Seahawks part of the segment, which has kind of been missing for a good amount of time outside of pieces of news here and there. Starting off with July 26th, we're getting right into the injury-related news, which isn't great if you know how the show goes. The team placed 6 players on the physically unable to perform list, or the PUP list, if you abbreviate it, starting with safety Jamal Adams, who, if you are unaware of his previous, or I guess more recent injury, was a torn quadriceps tendon. He does have a chance to be ready for the start of the season. Inside linebacker Jordan Brooks also has a chance to be ready for the start of the season, tearing his ACL last season. Tight end Noah Fant, nose tackle Austin Faolu, nose tackle Brian Monet tore his ACL last year as well, but he will likely miss some time during the course of this upcoming season. And then cornerback Tariq Woolen had knee surgery this past this past offseason, had a knee surgery as it had a kind of freak accident walking off the field in offseason workouts with the Seahawks. So he isn't expected to miss a ton of time as his recovery has already been taking place. And then also that same day on the 26th, the team put nose tackle Jonah Tavai on the active/non-football injury list. So not great news to start off training camp, but considering the injuries that these players suffered, it makes sense that they were put on the PUP list to begin training camp. On the 30th, I know we just mentioned his name, but the team activated tight end Noah Fant off the physically unable to perform list to get his season going. And Noah Fant really has a sort of big season ahead of him. He is in a contract year after the Seahawks picked up his 5th-year option this past season after his 4-year rookie contract that the Broncos originally gave him after drafting him 20th overall in the first round of the 2019 NFL draft. Wore off. So a big year for Noah Fant. He did deal with a knee injury towards the end of the regular season last year and did next to nothing in the team's wildcard loss to the 49ers this past year. Big, young, physical tight end who is going to try to earn himself a new contract. I mean, his option is pretty big, about $6.8 million. Him and Will Dissly helped the Seahawks tight end room move into 3rd place in the NFL in terms of how much money the Seahawks have spent across the league related to the league in terms of their tight end room. They paid their tight ends the 3rd most, their tight end room, that is. So that's an interesting fact if you know how much the Seahawks tight ends are used. Also, not so great news in terms of the injury list. On the 30th, it was announced that running backs Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet both are missing time at training camp. Walker III has a minor groin strain. He's being held out currently as a precaution so that injury doesn't get any worse. And then Charbonnet, the rookie out of UCLA, is dealing with a shoulder injury. He is out indefinitely. Now, what that means is an unspecified period of time. I know that some people see the word indefinitely and they freak out, but what head coach Pete Carroll and the team said that they want to do at the current moment is really look at that, get more tests on it, and see what they're looking at with that shoulder injury before they proceed with it and cause any sort of further damage. So that's the injury part of it. The sort of not so great stuff. I mean, it's nothing that's too, knock on wood, nothing too scary at the moment, but obviously things that need to be worked on, taken care of, sort of overseen for the Seahawks before they get some of these players into action or any workout really at all. So those 2 running back injuries do actually open up the running back room. I know that in the past few years, we don't like seeing injuries to running backs because that's a lot of what the Seahawks have dealt with. But young running back out of Georgia, not Alabama, Georgia, Kenny McIntosh has showed great speed and great cutting ability in training camp so far. It has impressed a lot of people with his tape. So who knows? I mean, I know that he was a really late draft pick for the Seahawks, and there was a lot of determination for him to kind of show out. So hey, maybe Kenny McIntosh bursts onto the field. So moving over to team-related notes as we continue with the training camp, pre-training camp sort of news here. On the 24th, 2 days before training camp started, the team signed outside linebacker / pass rusher Uchenna Nwosu to a 3-year, $59 million extension. It includes $32 million guaranteed with a $15 million signing bonus. And the way that his contract works actually created $2.91 million in salary cap space this season for a few other things to go on. So some work there. The Seahawks extend a young linebacker in his 20s, get him a guy that tied for the team lead in sacks last year with Darrell Taylor, and was really one of the team's most consistent performers last year, whether that was, tackles for loss, disrupting plays, getting to the quarterback, something that the Seahawks have desperately needed in their past few years. They lock up Uchenna after, what would have been his last year in his contract, after signing a 2-year deal 2 off seasons ago. So good, smart move to get Nwosu, lock him up there, and someone that's been a key performer for the Seahawks team. So to go and get that done was really smart there. Some other sort of related news, team notes here, is it's training camp. There's going to be a lot of roster moves, players that the Seahawks want to bring to training camp and take a look at, kick the tires on, and give a chance. Competition is a big thing, obviously, with Pete Carroll and this Seahawks organization. On the 25th, before I get into more of those team-related notes and what roster moves, I almost said waiver moves. On the 25th, the team restructured free safety Quandre Diggs' contract to convert his 2023 salary into a bonus, which does help move up some salary cap space there. And it's funny because Diggs himself tweeted about it. If you follow Quandre Diggs on Twitter, you know that he is someone who will break news himself. He was actually the first to tweet about the Bobby Wagner deal this past offseason. Well, yeah, so that was kind of fun. Also on the 25th, the team did sign running back Zach Charbonnet to his 4-year rookie deal worth $6,876,079 with a $2,784 signing bonus. Then we get into the roster moves, making all sorts of space for training camp here. The team on the 25th, waived defensive backs James Campbell and Isaiah Dunn, in addition to outside linebacker Alton Robinson. Now, Robinson was an interesting name to see cut, considering that he never really saw a consistent amount of playing time for the Seahawks. He dealt with injuries and it didn't work out for Seattle. At this current point in time, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that he gets brought back at some point in training camp or maybe even on the team's practice squad. But right now, the corresponding move to that was signing defensive tackle Roderick Perry. So that ends the current roster moves, and we get over to the NFL Top 100 list. Now, if you don't know, the NFL Top 100 list is a list compiled every year right before the next season starts, reflecting on the past season, and it's put together and voted on by players around the NFL. So it's their opinion on it. A lot of people have their respective thoughts on it, and that's fine. It's tough to really look at these lists and put too much stock into it, considering that some players don't see certain guys all the time, and they don't know that their talent level, and it's not necessarily a good evaluator of skill, production, what have you. So we get here, the NFL released their just missed the top 100, and there are 3 Seahawks in that list. At 110, free safety Quandre Diggs, 102, inside linebacker Jordan Brooks, and pictured on your screen there, 101, wide receiver DK Metcalf. Now, there was some interesting commentary on this because you could certainly argue that both Metcalf and Diggs should both be in the top 100 list, but again, not the best sort of way to evaluate talent, production, etc. Even former Seahawks cornerback DJ Reed left a tweet about this, saying that any list that doesn't have DK and Quandre in the top 100 isn't valid. So hard to disagree with that. But we get into the actual top 100. The rest of the list is still currently being unveiled. So this isn't a finalized list. There will probably be I hope so. A few more a few more players on this list for the Seahawks. So the current players that have been unveiled already in the top 100 are at 77, quarterback Geno Smith, his first time in the NFL's top 100 list after a career year with Seattle. At 76, cornerback Tariq Woolen, who burst onto the scene as a rookie and tied for the league lead in interceptions, which is a wild stat in and of itself. And then at 62, he wasn't wearing a Seahawks jersey during this past season, but he is now, and he's back. At 62, inside linebacker Bobby Wagner is the most recent Seahawk to be named to that list. That is being currently unveiled, so we'll probably get some more for you when we come back next week, but that is it for the current point in time. We get back into the sort of roster-related moves as the Seahawks continue, as I said, to work out this training camp roster. They're going to give guys a chance and see what they've got. Competition, again, it's always a big thing with this Seahawks team. On the 26th, the team signed outside linebacker Levi Bell, cornerback Andrew Whitaker, and cornerback Chris Steele, while waiving nose tackle Jonah Tavai with that non-football injury designation, as we talked about when we got into the injury-related news. A familiar face was brought back, as I voice crack a little bit there. On the 27th, the team signed linebacker Ben Burke-Kirven, the former University of Washington standout, who was dealing with some injuries in his career, potentially thought that he might retire, has been signed by the Seahawks, so he gets a chance there. The Seahawks kind of looking for more outside linebackers, and the fact that Jordan Brooks is going to be out. I know Devin Bush has been with the team now, so the linebacker spot outside of Bobby Wagner, inside linebacker at least, and then outside of Uchenna Nwosu, and the fact that this team needs more pass rush in general, there's spots to be had there at the linebacker position. So maybe Ben Burke-Kirven shows out there. He's a little bit undersized, quote unquote, for a linebacker. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to make any sort of splash to earn himself a spot on the Week 1 roster. On the 28th, this isn't roster related, quarterback Geno Smith declined an offer to appear on the Netflix show Quarterback, the season 2 of it. So, I understand it. It would have been maybe interesting to see a little bit look into Geno and sort of the behind the scenes stuff, but it makes sense. Probably wants to avoid any sort of distraction. Like some players don't like having Hard Knocks, which the Jets will be on this year. Also that day, the team signed cornerback Devin Witherspoon to his rookie deal. He became the last rookie in this entire draft class to sign his deal. It's a 4-year, fully guaranteed $31.86 million deal with a $20.17 million signing bonus. So good amount of money for the number 5 overall pick in this year's draft. They get a cornerback who they imagine will start for them immediately to sign his deal. And after missing the first few days of training camp, he's back with the team and getting workouts. And also that day on the 28th, as I mentioned, roster moves. The team signed UW running back, at least last year at UW. He did transfer in from the University of Virginia, Wayne Tuolapapa, to a deal, and waived cornerback Montre Braswell. So that is it for Seahawks-related news as they continue training camp. Training camp will continue through the next few weeks. Preseason games don't start till August 10th, so we'll get to that. But I imagine that we'll see more roster-related moves and things of that nature. And hopefully some of those players that were on the PUP list will get activated by the time we see you again. So we head over straight into Mariners-related news as things continue. Tomorrow is the MLB trade deadline, so things are going to get interesting around here, I'm sure. We'll get into the games, though, before we discuss any sort of trade deadline acquisitions and such. The Mariners headed out on a 6-game road trip in 7 days after a 10-game homestand, beginning with the Minnesota Twins, a Twins team that they saw for 4 games during that 10-game homestand. So they've played that team 7 games in 10 days, I believe it was. So a lot of time to see a certain team. Anyway, they head over to the state of Great Lakes, July 24th at the Twins, a 3-4 loss. Unfortunately, player of the game, pinch hitter / second baseman Colton Wong. Wong had a 1 hit, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. A pinch hit go-ahead homer in the top of the 9th inning actually gave the Mariners a 3-2 lead at the time. Seattle was unable to close the deal in the bottom of the 9th and then failed to score in extra innings to lose that game as Carlos Correa walked that off. So they lose the series opener. But on the 25th, they come back with a 9-7 win. Play the game center fielder Julio Rodriguez. Julio got bumped down lower in the order in this ball game, and he responded with a 2-hit, 2-run, 3 RBI game. Both of those home runs. It is his first multi-homer game of the season. So Julio responding there and really starting to turn things up. We'll get to that in a minute, but we'll finish out this series against the Twins. July 26th at the Twins, an 8-7 win. So the Mariners win their second consecutive series, beating the Twins in Minnesota, a Twins team that had been the hottest team wins-wise since the All-Star break. Our player of the game shortstop, Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore slots in for J.P. Crawford, who got the day off, hitting 3 hits just doesn't sound right. 2 runs and 4 RBIs. It's Moore's first multi-homer game of his career, and it really looked like at this point in time the Demo was starting to find his groove after missing all of spring training and really struggling in the first month really that he had been activated off the injury list. So they win that series against the Twins after losing the first game. They get a day off as they head down to Arizona to play this Diamondbacks team that's got a lot of talent. They're really young, including Seattle native and all-star Corbin Carroll. So we go over to this Diamondback series here. July 28th at the D-backs, a 5-2 win, so they begin the series the right way. Our player of the game, catcher Cal Raleigh. Cal, 2 hits, 1 run, and 2 RBIs on the day. So they get game 1 of the series. They lose game 2, unfortunately, in a tight one. Corbin Carroll actually represented the winning run in the bottom of the 8th, stealing a base. Well, he advanced on a balk first after drawing a walk, stole third base, and then it would advance on a bloop single in the center field. So Corbin Carroll terrorizing on the base path. Our player of the game here, catcher Tom Murphy, 1 hit, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. Tom has a solo homer, and he gets that second RBI on a sac fly. So they lose that one. I mean, you lose by 1 run to this Diamondbacks team that surprised a lot of people. I don't think that's a disappointing thing necessarily. Disappointing in the way you lost it, sure, but understandable that you would lose 1 game to them. They bounce back on July 30th to win the series, their 3rd consecutive series win, a 4-0 win as they shut out this Diamondbacks team. As our player of the game, starting pitcher Luis Castillo, is rock solid. La Piedra, 6 innings pitched, 2 hits given up, no runs, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. It's his 12th quality start of the season. So he continues to be valuable for this Mariners team as the ace of the Mariners here. And in this ball game, actually, after there was a period of time leading into the All-Star break where Luis kind of struggled, Castillo was able to narrow his ERA down to 2.88, which is the 3rd best in the American League. So, it was a good stretch here. The Mariners recorded double-digit hits in 5 consecutive games. It's the most consecutive 10-plus hit games for the Mariners all season. They improved to a 500 series record, meaning that they are 16-16-2 across the series that they have played this year. It was their 10th shutout of the season, and they, as I mentioned, had won 3 consecutive series. Our player of the past week, there are plenty of good options. Tom Murphy has been hitting the ball well, really finding his groove. Dylan Moore had been really productive until he is now day-to-day. At the moment, J.P. Crawford has a great OPS over the past week, but we went with Julio considering his overall stats. Julio and JP were really kind of neck and neck, but because of the total amount of stats that we saw with Julio, I went with Julio over the past 7 days for the 2022 AL Rookie of the Year. 10 hits, 7 runs, 3 doubles, 3 homers, so 6 total extra base hits, 4 RBIs, 1 stolen base, a 345 batting average, a 367 on base percentage, which could be improved, but still, a 759 slugging, which is great to see from a guy who shows a lot of power and been struggling a lot. There's still some things for him to work on, surely, and a 1.126 OPS for Julio there. Really good to see that sort of improvement from Julio after he had struggled to begin the season. Kind of finding a groove here. There's still some moments where he needs to improve. He's had 9 plate appearances in the 9th inning, and 6 of those plate appearances have ended in strikeouts. I don't believe any of them have recorded a hit. So an area for him to improve there, certainly. But the Mariners are in a very interesting situation. We talked about this last week about, that series win against the Blue Jays. Was it enough? Did they need a series sweep of the Blue Jays, considering where the Blue Jays are in the wild card picture and where the Mariners are? So the Mariners are going to need a little help if they're going to get to the postseason, right? And they got that yesterday. Yesterday went perfect for them in terms of who lost and where they ended up and the fact that they won as well. The Mariners are currently set at 5 games behind the Texas Rangers for the division. So technically, the division is still somehow in play here for a Mariners team that has been arguably the most mediocre in terms of win-loss and when they've been at 500 over the course of this season. And they are 4 games behind a wild card spot. So it's very realistic. Well, not very realistic, but it's very possible, rather, that the Mariners are going to be able to find themselves in the playoff picture. That leaves them in an interesting situation now because President of Baseball Operations, Jerry Dipoto, said before this Diamondback series that they just won that they aren't going to make a decision on what they're going to do at the trade deadline until after the Diamondback series. It is now after that Diamondback series. And, considering the fact that they won that series and where they are in terms of the division, where they are in terms of the wild card, where they are in terms of what they need, being a buying team at the trade deadline makes sense. You could also argue that you'd like to retool and reload for the 2024 season, considering the fact that other opponents in your division, like Texas, adding Max Scherzer at the trade deadline, ahead of it, the Astros adding, the Angels adding, that, hey, you could do that. You could kind of bow your head out and say, hey, we're going to reload. We're going to do a light sell-off, and we're going to prep for 2024. But at least me, maybe I'm stubborn. I know I'm stubborn, but we'll say maybe just for the show. I'd like to buy. I'd like to buy at the trade deadline. That is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time. The Mariners do play a game 3 hours and 40 minutes later after that trade deadline expires. So it's going to be an interesting next few days, folks. The Mariners are playing the Boston Red Sox these next few days in a odd 3-game homestand. And the Red Sox are one of the teams that the Mariners are trying to get ahead of in terms of this wild card race. The Red Sox are in that highly competitive American League East. As we get the wild card standings to load here. They won't load. I'll just put them on my... Okay, there they go. So, Boston is actually the first team looking into the playoff picture as the Rays, Astros, and Blue Jays are the 3 current teams that sit in the wild card. The next 3 teams out are Boston, New York, and LA. I apologize. The Mariners are 4.5 games out of the wild card. So you've got those teams to get over. So if you are able to win this series, or at the greatest scenario, sweep the Red Sox, which won't be easy. I mean, they're 5-5 over the last 10 games, lost their last 2. I digress. That would be huge. You kind of need to win this series no matter what, let alone sweep it. So it'll be really big. But just to get a final prediction out there of what I think the Mariners will do at the trade deadline, I think they stay pat. I honestly think they stay pat. I don't know what Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander can do in the Mariners front office to really get a improving bat to add to this lineup without sacrificing too much. Emerson Hancock is a name that comes to mind in terms of trades. But, hey, we've seen crazier things happen. We were live on air when Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker were acquired. So who knows? We get over here to continue with actual team news and not to just stray off. On the 26th, the team did make a trade. They traded for reliever Trent Thornton from the Toronto Blue Jays. Seattle receives Thornton. He was DFA'd a few days before this trade as the Blue Jays made room for Genesis Cabrera. And Toronto receives Tacoma infielder Mason McCoy. So kind of a non-move there. Trent Thornton actually made his first appearance for the organization last night, pitching in one inning of relief for the Rainiers and striking out 2 batters, not recording any other stats. No hits allowed, no runs allowed, no walks, just 2 strikeouts. So that's a good way to get your first sort of impression there for the organization. And the Mariners have dealt with injuries to their pitching staff regardless. So not a bad idea to add a reliever there. But again, it's going to be a big trade deadline. It's a big next 2 days. The Mariners sit at a 55-win, 51-loss record. They're 4 games above 500, which is great. They're 4th in the American League West, though, 5 games back from the division. We'll take a look at they're 4.5 games back from the wild card. Will be 5.5 games back from the division. So still possible. Looking ahead, they have a 3-game set here against the Boston Red Sox. We already stated the importance of this series. The first 2 games of the series on July 31st and August 1st are both 6:40 p.m. Pacific time start. With August 2nd, the series finale on Wednesday is a 1:10 Pacific time matinee. After the really tiny 3-game homestand, the Mariners head out on the road to battle an Angels team that's decided that they're not going to trade Shohei Ohtani, and they're rather buying now to try and win this season. They have 4 games set down in Anaheim. The first 2 games of the series on the 3rd and 4th of August are 6:30 p.m. Pacific time first pitches. August 5th and Game 3 is a 6:07, and then to close out on Sunday, August 6th, is a 1:07 p.m. Pacific time start. So we move over here to our Storm, who had struggled. They were on a 10-game losing streak this past week, but they were able to snap that. They're on a 2-game winning streak right now, which is really nice. We'll get to the not-so-great part. July 25th at the Liberty, the Storm battle all game long against the Liberty team that they have played really well this season, but they're unable to close the gap as they have been in most of their losses this season, and the losses that they've played to Liberty. An 82-86 loss. Our player of the game, guard Jewel Lloyd, 32 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block for the Gold Mamba in this loss, unfortunately. So at this current point in time, the Storm losing streak had gotten to 10. It's the longest losing streak in franchise history. What are we going to do here? Because as I mentioned last week, the Storm would plug one hole and then another one would spring open. And it's what are we going to do? You have to put together a complete effort. It is possible with this team. They are a ragtag group of players, whether it's veterans from around the league or younger players. Learning had been tough for them to apply to these games, and they were able to do that. Though immediately after to snap the 10-game losing streak, they stop it at 10. They beat the Chicago Sky on the road just a week after they had lost to them at home in ugly fashion. Seattle wins that one on July 28th, 82-74. Our player of the game, center Ezi Magbagor, the Australian, puts up a double-double, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Ezi all over the stat sheet there in a big way. Honorable mention, Gabby Williams. We'll get to Gabby here in a minute. So Seattle wins the second game of their road trip. They close it out successfully, so a happy plane ride home. They beat the Indiana Fever on July 30th, 85-62. Our player of the game, guard Jewel Lloyd. Once again, the Gold Mamba shows out 26 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, which is a season high for Jewel, 2 steals as well. So I mentioned we'd get to Gabby. We do here. Our player of the week, I went with Gabby. Because these last 2 games here, you notice it wasn't, her stats for the last 3, because that game against the Liberty, tough shooting game. Gabby, in her past 2 games, in that Sky win, a 17-point, 6 rebound, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block performance. And then in that win over the Fever, 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. 3 steals big there. Obviously, we know Gabby for her defense, but as I've talked about before, whether it's this past season when she joined the Storm initially as they tried to give Sue Bird a 5th title to end her career on, or this year, when it was announced that she finally signed after there was all that back and forth. Gabby finding her offense is key to her really blossoming as a star player. We know how good defensively she is. She distributes the ball well. But when she finds her shot, it makes her really dangerous. It makes her a really key part of this Storm team. So, there's not too much to go into in those Storm wins. They played complete games. They're getting good performances off the bench. Seattle's bench is second in the WNBA in terms of their points scored. The interesting note is that they've moved Sammy Whitcomb into the starting point guard position for these 3 games. Now, this was talked about in the offseason when the team brought Sammy back to the franchise after she spent some time with the Liberty there. Sammy's not the greatest passer in the world per se, but her scoring ability, her 3 points, obviously big, kind of opens things up for this offense more because it brings another threat on the floor for the Storm. Dulcie Fanka Mengiadu is a great rebounder, great inside, but her shot, she's limited to the paint, really. And we look across the starting five, we go from Dulcie, we already talked about her. Ezzy can shoot the 3-ball. She's your second scorer. We know that. Okay, so there's 2 scorers with Jewel Lloyd. Gabby Williams, until she really hits her shots, teams aren't going to respect it enough. She hit her shots in the last 2 games, but we'll imagine as if though she's not. So there's 2 scorers still. Adding Sammy on the floor really opens up another option, not only giving Jewel more room, but also, the danger in what Sammy brings as well. So it's great to see that. Jordan Horson missed that game against the Liberty with a shoulder. I know, due to personal reasons, my apologies. But she was back. She had a great game against the Fever there off the bench. I believe she had 17 points there. So you're seeing a more complete game. And in that Chicago game last week, at home against the Sky, the Storm were out-rebounded massively. This time against the Sky, it was the Storm who out-rebounded their opponent massively. So you'll see it throughout the course of this season. I would hope to not see another losing streak like this, but we're going to see ebbs and flows. We're going to see learning moments, growing pains, all of that. There was a long growing pain. It was painful. But this is all building towards next season and future success so that the Storm can learn from this. The young Storm players can learn from this, get this information, and know how to apply it to different situations going forward. That's what we've talked about leading into the season and as the season's progressed. So didn't like seeing the losing streak get that long, but good to see that they kind of put it together there and sort of the performances that they put together in the wins over the Sky and over the Fever there. So the injury report, we'll get to it. Against New York, as I mentioned, Jordan Horson was out due to personal reasons, but there was nothing else. And then in the wins over Chicago and Indiana on the 28th and 30th, both of those were clean injury reports. So Seattle fully healthy. Lately, they are a 6-win, 19-loss team. They're 12th in, their next game is Wednesday, August 2nd versus the Dallas Wings. That's a 7:30 p.m. tip-off. That game you can watch on the CBS Sports Network if you're not joining us down at Climate Pledge Arena. And then the second game of this week, after coming back for one game, the Storm head back out on the road August 5th at the Phoenix Mercury. That's a 7 o'clock tip-off time down in Phoenix. That game will be on Prime Video if you're in the state of Washington, and NBA TV otherwise. So, it's kind of all positive there with the Storm and the way that they had won their last 2 games. We get over here to our Sounders. And not so positive. Things started out well in the July 30th Leagues Cup matchup versus Monterrey. This was a do or die game for the Sounders in terms of Leagues Cup, but the circumstances that they would have needed for Seattle to advance there were some other ones where other things would come into play. Otherwise, Seattle, the only clear and decisive way that the Sounders could have advanced in Leagues Cup in this match against Monterrey is if they had won by a 4-goal differential, and they didn't do that. As you can see on your screen here, a 2-4 loss. Play of the match, center attacking mid, not team captain. We'll get into that in a second. Nico Ladero. Nico, a 7.5 match rating, 1 goal, 79% passing, 2 shots in the match opening goal in the second minute off of a free kick just outside of the box. We'll get into it here. So leading into this match, Seattle knew that they needed to win arguably 4-0, 4-goal differential regardless. The last few trainings that they had leading into it, whether it be the ones at Starfire or the one at Lumen Field the day before this match, had been high intensity, high energy. The players, the vibe in the locker room was good. And they knew what they needed to do to win. And it looked like that. They looked like they knew what they needed to do to win. As 25 seconds in, Hector Moreno for Monterrey had a yellow card as the Sounders were on the attack, giving them a free kick just outside of the 18-yard box. Nico Ladero hits a strike in the top right corner. Monterrey goalkeeper Esteban Andrada didn't even move, didn't leave his feet to try and make a save on that. So Seattle gets a goal 2 minutes in. You're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. What's going on here? What is the Sounders team learning how to score and doing so off of set pieces, something that they've been bad at for the last few years. And then 4 minutes later, Jordan Morris scores off a Leo Chu cross into the ball. Leo Chu takes advantage of some sloppy, lazy passing in the back line by Monterrey and gets a ball into Jordan Morris, who makes an uncovered run back post. Great header, sends it down as Esteban Andrada goes up for a save as he expected a higher header. Seattle's up 2-0 within 6 minutes. You're like, oh, wait a minute. They're going to do it. This is a, fairy tale kind of thing that, Seattle reignited themselves offensively, looked like the Sounders team that the MLS in general had come to loathe, had been called insufferable. And then they got a kick in the teeth. And then reality set in. And Monterrey scored the next 4 goals. In the 31st minute, they got one off some nice combination play as Monterrey had room and got a rebounded shot after Stephen Cleveland. We'll get into why Stephen Cleveland was in this match. Made the initial save, but then the Sounders back line allowed enough space and time for a rebounded shot. So you're like, oh, shoot, okay, it's 2-1. It's still possible, though. 45th minute with 2 minutes into extra time, and Monterrey gets a penalty. Whether that was a penalty or not doesn't matter now, at least. And you go into halftime 2-2. Like, oh shoot, where did all the momentum go? Life had been sucked out. It was kind of a punch in the gut. And then 3 minutes after the halftime whistle, okay, regroup, move forward. We can only do so much about the past now. 3 minutes in, Monterrey scores. And it's kind of like the wheels have fallen off. We're on the type, it's no longer a speeding car or speeding train. We're on the sort of Flintstones car where they're, running to power the thing. So yeah, Monterrey scores 4 goals unanswered, and Seattle gets bounced. And they now don't play a match until August 20th when they host Atlanta. It is really frustrating. To see this sort of thing. Seattle has been really scuttling, kind of stumbling forward since May after they had vaulted themselves to the top of the Western Conference here in the MLS. And now they just kind of look like they're continuing to search for answers. They had that jolt in the first 10 minutes there after that 6-minute goal, in the time after that leading into the Monterrey goal in the 31st minute. Monterrey really kind of settled in. They said, hey, we got to wake up. They're going to score these first few goals in the first, 10 minutes. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about here. In our write-up, we talked about it. What do you do in the short term and in the long term? Because in the long term, there's a lot of answers. A lot of questions that need to be answered. With a lot of contracts that expire at the end of this season, some aging veterans, and where the club wants to go directionally. With this, whether they want to tear things down and rebuild from here, considering you don't have a lot of players necessarily in your MLS Next Pro and just general youth prospects that can start immediately. And in the short term, you still have MLS playoffs to shoot for. You still got the rest of the regular season to go. You are at 4th place in the Western Conference. You can find a way to climb higher than that. But with the way you've been playing, you arguably might slip even more. So, it's like I said in the weeks past with the Mariners, for the Sounders, it's going to have to come internally. There's nobody that they can bring in right now or call up, come off the bench that's going to really kind of give them a kickstart and really give them a burst of energy. They've been generally strong defensively, not in last night's loss. Been generally strong defensively. It's just been their attack, and then their attack looked great in these first 6 minutes. What went wrong? I couldn't tell you. So, anywho, we get over to injury-related news here. On the 25th, goalkeeper Stefan Fry underwent a procedure to correct joint alignment in his finger. Fry began rehabilitation immediately following the procedure, and he's not expected to miss an extended period of time. So that was the reason why we saw goalkeeper Stephen Cleveland in this match. I know that Monterrey scored the last 4 goals unanswered, but I wouldn't really put those on him. He didn't get a ton of help from his back line and his team in general. So, as I mentioned, the next Sounders match is not until August 20th when the team hosts Atlanta here at Lumen Field. So we move over here to our OL Reign. We talk about a soccer club that's actually doing anything. Challenge Cup play. We get into Challenge Cup play as the Women's World Cup continues to push forward. The Reign without a NWSL leading 8 players that are currently at the World Cup. The Reign got back into action with a Challenge Cup match against the San Diego Wave here on July 28th. They would win this one by a 1-0 result. Our player of the match, forward and team captain, Bethany Balser, 1 goal, 4 shots, and 1 shot on target. In our photo of the match here, you can see Bethany celebrating her penalty kick goal. She was shadowboxing the corner flag here, just kind of funny. So with that win, the Reign clinch the Western Division of the Challenge Cup. It means that they've got an automatic berth into the semifinal round of the Challenge Cup. If you're unaware of what the Challenge Cup is, it's an in-season tournament in the NWSL. It used to be leading into the NWSL regular season as if it was a preseason match. And it was kind of viewed like that for the longest period of time until recently. The prize pool money got a kick up, so now there's extra incentive to win these matches. And with the depth that the Reign have, even still the depth that they've got with the 8 players lost to the World Cup, they've been able to succeed. They haven't lost, knock on wood, in this Challenge Cup yet through 5 matches. They got 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw. So as I mentioned, they clinched the Western Division there. They were without midfielder Jess Fishlock with a leg injury in this one, and defender Kellyanne Livingstone was questionable with a leg injury, but she was available for wow, that was bad, for selection when the roster, the starting 11 came out. And then defender Lou Barnes was not listed on the injury report, but she was given the match off to sort of rest and give other players some minutes there in Challenge Cup play. So it was really, it was a 1-0 result, but the Reign defense looked strong in this one. San Diego really didn't create too many dangerous possessions and opportunities in this match against goalkeeper Claudia Dickey in the back line of Veronica Latsko, Sam Hyatt, Phoebe McLaren, and Shea Holmes. UW Husky Shea Holmes. That back line looks strong. The only really veteran in there that was consistently in that back line, because Latsko was normally as a forward, but we've talked about it through the season. Laura Harvey and the Reign have played her at outside back for opportunities like this with the World Cup happening. That back line looks strong. Claudia Dickey looked strong when she needed to. And otherwise, it was a pretty solid performance. I mean, could have generated more offensively, certainly. But the Reign get that penalty kick late in that match. Balser wearing the captain's armband as Lou Barnes was out, taking the match off and getting some rest. Wore it well. I mean, she stepped in. She took that penalty, buried it, top corner, had the shadow boxing celebration. So it was a nice night for Bethany. We'll get into more Bethany later. As we've got some team-related news here. On the 26th of July, the club exercised its option on forward Veronica Latsko to keep her with the Reign through the 2024 season. Latsko had made 12 appearances in the 2023 regular season, earning 7 starts just over halfway through the regular season. She is currently tied for her single-season record in goals with 4 and assists with 2 in her 713 minutes played. The 6-year forward has also started in all 4 of the Reign's Challenge Cup matches. This was before this San Diego one, helping the club remain undefeated through the tournament. The Reign weren't done with player contracts, as on the 28th, they exercised the option on defender Phoebe McLaren to keep her with the Reign through the 2024 season. After missing the first half of the season with a back injury, McLaren made her return to the pitch on the 28th of June in the Challenge Cup match against the Portland Thorns, helping the club earn its 4th consecutive clean sheet in the competition. Following her return, the 25-year-old has started in both regular season games, recording 7 clearances and 6 interceptions. In 2022, McLaren appeared in 10 regular season games with the Reign, starting in 6 of them. As part of that back line, she accumulated 13 clearances, 14 interceptions, and 5 blocks in 595 minutes of play, helping the team earn 3 clean sheets over that course of time. The defender also had 2 appearances for the Reign back in 2022. During the Challenge Cup, tallying 5 clearances, 2 interceptions, and 37 successful passes. Just really quickly to touch on those, I mean, Lasco has been invaluable for this team in terms of what she brings as a veteran and her versatility across the pitch, and just kind of being willing to step in anywhere. I mean, she played as an outside back when she's traditionally a forward. I got another spam advertisement about a fake brand wanting to sponsor her. Anyway, and then McLaren, her only trouble is she makes questionable tackle here and there. Otherwise, she's really solid defensively and is a big part of that depth. But just talking about that depth there with the win over San Diego, I mean, look at Latsko and McLaren are great examples of that. You know, a veteran in Latsko coming in and, you know, can start up top and is valuable on the attack, but also helped and played on that back line in this game against San Diego. And then McLaren helping as a center back and really being rock solid to ensure that Claudia Dickey and Golden have to deal with much of anything. And again, is really strong defensively. She's just not better than Alana Cook and Sam Hyatt when it's starting. So really solid there, and smart decisions, you know, understandable, reasonable decision there to exercise those options for the next season. So we look forward here with our reign. They sit at a 7-win, 5-loss, 3-draw record in the regular season for 4th in the league table, 24 points. As I mentioned, in the Challenge Cup, they clinched the Western Division, so they're first in the West with 13 points. Looking ahead, they play one more Challenge Cup match in the group stage. That is next week, August 6th, versus the Portland Thorns here in Seattle. It's the first time that these teams have matched up since the doubleheader, where the rain fell, unfortunately, this past year, this current season, with a 3 p.m. Pacific time kickoff that will be on Paramount Plus and TSN Plus if you're Canadian. So to wrap up here with our star of the week, I said that we'd talk about Bethany a little bit later. She is my Seattle star of the week. You know, Balser is in her 5th year in the NWSL and with the club. She won the 2019 Rookie of the Year. She has either been the sole leader in goals scored for this club in every season or tied for the team lead. Last year, tied with Megan Rapinoe. And it was really impressive to see how she conducted herself with that captain's armband on that you see. She talked about how when she was worn it, I believe she had worn it one time before this. We talked about it in the post-game press conference there after that match over the Wave. But she said she wears it for Lou Barnes. She talked about her pride for this club and, you know, taking that into consideration and, you know, the growth that she's shown, the vulnerability that she's shown, her play on the pitch obviously speaks for itself, as I talked about, you know, as a goal scorer. But also if you watch a rain match, Bethany Balser kind of gets thrown around, and not because it's like easy, but she kind of she takes a physical toll in these matches, but she always gets back up and she continues the attack. And as I mentioned, the leading goal scorer for this club, every year that she's been with it, you know, in this league, in the NWSL. So to see the way that she's conducted herself as the team's captain there in this match had me thinking, and we did a write-up on this, that, you know, once the OGs of Jess Fishlock, Megan Rapinoe, and Lou Barnes have hung their cleats up for good, make a lot of sense if Bethany Balser wore the captain's armband. And, you know, if we were to have opinions, she'd have my vote. So that will wrap things up for the July 31st episode of CSS on Converge. You're good to see you, as always. As we wrap up July, we continue through August here. The Seahawks will continue their training camp ahead of what should be a big year. The Mariners, the trade deadline's tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure, of course, that we'll run the socials there. We don't have any Twitter problems this week, thankfully. Knock on wood. You know, the Storm continued their regular season, currently on a 2-game winning streak. The Sounders get a little bit of time off. Maybe they need it, considering the way that they've scuttled a bit in the regular season and then getting bounced quickly from the League's Cup. The Reign will continue their regular season as the World Cup continues to rage on. The Kraken are in the offseason. Seawolves are in the offseason. A bunch of off-seasons. Anyway, until we see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Thank you.